We did not improve in the sales job. After 6 months, we ended up both getting fired from this job. So that was a major wake-up call.
I have a brother who's blind. He has highs and lows, but he takes on the best that life has to offer. And I made a promise to myself that I would never go a day hating my life.
When I left that relationship, I was reminded of like my first relationship, of like my grandmother, like all these things started to come up. And I was like, it's crazy that you feel it in your body. I have seen God's hand on my life. And I feel like God will never let what's meant for you miss you.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Grind. I'm your host, Lilliana Matos. I'm an entrepreneur, mentor, and a person that believes in keeping God at the center of your business plan. So today, two things. First of all, I'm wearing my Philadelphia sweater. As a New Jersey native, Philadelphia is only 40 minutes away. I spent a lot of time there. I love this city. And they are playing in the Super Bowl in this upcoming week. But you're probably going to see this in the future. So whether they win or lose, Eagles, I'm your number one fan. I hope that you guys take it home this Super Bowl season. But that is one of the things that I want to talk about here today. The second thing is I have a really great guest, one of my new closest friends. He is killing it in the workspace. He's such a good person. And he's a person that also believes that keeping God at the center of your business plan will allow him to conquer pivotal growth. And God has just been working on him and in him in so many beautiful ways. And I have had a front seat to his success. And we're going to share his story with you today. My good friend, Bryan Welch. Thank you for joining us.
Lilliana, thank you so much. I think that was such a beautiful introduction. You leaned so hard on the Philadelphia Eagles that the fans are probably like, Saquon Barkley is going to be on the podcast.
Yeah, they're probably going to eject me from Los Angeles at this point.
And you know what? That's okay. Some people are leaving, some people are staying, and sometimes we help them with their move. So that's kind of what we do.
Well, if you need that, guys, we're here to service you at the highest capacity, 5-star experience all the way.
So Saquon, if you come out to the LA Rams, we got you. Say less.
Got you. We'll find you a nice big home for you and your family to get comfortable in.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, but in all seriousness, thank you, Lily, for having me on. And I very much am grateful that you've honestly walked into my life and even the lives of my brothers. And immediately when you came into Luxury Collective, you brought such a special energy and such like this positivity, like rays of sunshine. And it's funny.
About you.
It's funny. I was telling my fiance yesterday, I was like, you know who Liliana reminds me of? And she's like, who? And I was like, she actually kind of reminds me of my mom.
Oh.
Which is a funny sort of connection. But my mom, you'll always find her smiling. Like, I never once has had a bad day. Like she'll have some moments like here and there, but never a bad day. And so I see that same thing for you. Like I've like
thank you. I mean, honestly, I think that's the highest compliment one can receive. Reminding them of their mother. I'm sure you love her dearly, and she probably has.
She's the best.
Has the best place in your heart forever.
For sure, and everybody loves my mom too.
Yeah,
so
I don't take that with a grain of salt. And thank you for noticing that. Honestly, Bryan, you're not the first to say that I get a lot of compliments because I'm always happy. And I think that's a choice, right? I think happiness is a choice.
For sure.
I think you have to decide if you're going to choose happiness or not. And it's rare that you'll see me in a bad mood. And if you do, everyone run.
Yeah, we're like, something must actually be wrong if that's the case. See, the difference though, Lily, is that there's happiness and then there's joy. I think happiness is one of those things like, oh, I just want to be happy. Well, when you put it that way, it's kind of like you're chasing a state of emotion. Like when I get there, I'll be happy. When I make $1 million, I'll be happy. When I find the person, I'll be happy. But when you live in joy, first of all, like the word enjoy, she's enjoying life. She's enjoying the process. I think it's a different energy. And you carry that. You don't even like have to know when I say, oh, Lily's happy. I'm like, that girl is joyful. Yeah. Like you should be dancing on like any hot second.
Oh,
so
thank you. I appreciate that. That's I truly believe that too. I wake up with so much joy in my heart because I get to live another day. I get to be amongst amazing people like you. And I decided that at a young age. Like, I don't know if you guys know this, but I have a brother who's blind. He became blind at the age of 30. You know, he wasn't born blind. He was diagnosed with diabetes at a very young age. And through having it, his health deteriorated. But God really did a miracle in his life. He had a pancreas and a kidney transplant through the good grace of God. That's a story for a different day. But he lost his vision in that hindsight. And he still pushes on life and with a smile and enjoys the best that life has to offer him. He has highs and lows, but he takes on the best that life has to offer. And I made a promise to myself that I would never go a day hating my life or like not really enjoying what the world gives me, because if he could still have a smile on his face, what do I have to complain about? And I embody that every single day. But enough about me, Bryan. We're here to talk about you. Bryan, give us some history about who you are. You have also, just transferred into this real estate space. You've accomplished so much in such a little amount of time. You came from personal trainer to owning that space and dominating that space and being a business owner of that, to then coming into real estate, to failing hard on your face, and now have a successful team. Top 3 team at Luxury Collective this quarter out of 360 agents and probably 30 teams. You guys are crushing it, and I am in awe about all the things that you guys are doing, and just see the small, short amount of time that you're doing it, and just tell us about that.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think, first of all, it's not all everything that you see on Instagram, right? Because it's not all highlights. And the fact of the matter is that I think the journey started a little bit further back, and it probably started with more lows than highs. Because the reason that I got into personal training, if we take it a little bit further back, is I had a cold call sales job. And it was my first job outside of college.
Okay.
And I got the job with my best friend. He and I were like the very similar personality types, kind of like the life of the party type of people. Well, unfortunately, we were living this life of the party lifestyle outside of college, which when you have like real things that matter, you can't necessarily live that lifestyle for that long.
Yeah.
Which we realized only after we were doing it.
Yeah.
So while certain people in that organization were making hundreds of thousands of dollars, probably $500,000, we were like skating by, like paycheck to paycheck, and then spending into the club.
Enough for tequila.
Enough for tequila for sure. Like definitely. Like that was probably half. Yeah. So needless to say, we did not improve in the sales job, which, as you and I know, if you're an entrepreneur, you're in sales, you have to constantly be reinvesting in yourself, getting better. And it's really a mindset. It's that growth mindset. So at that time, we did not have that mindset. We just had the party mindset, live in the moment mindset. And unfortunately, after 6 months, we ended up both getting fired from this job. So that was a major wake-up call, coming from
You get
college.
fired, Bryan. I can't even believe it.
Yeah. I couldn't either at the time. But then in hindsight, I'm like, no, for sure I would have. If I were in their shoes, I definitely would have fired me. Because I had
You're
excuse.
such a stand-up guy now. I don't even know who this version is.
No, I was just a stand-up comedian. But in the workplace, they were like, sir, you're going to have to get back on the phone. And I was like, all right, who wants? Yeah, no, for sure. So I ended up like getting let go from this job. And this is in Colorado at the time. I moved back to California, and I sat across from my mom, and she saw me, and really she saw this broken kid. Like, cause I was broken, like, and a lot of those relationships that I had built during that time, like no one was there when I was at this rock bottom.
Wow.
I mean, my best friend was there, but he was also kind
Broken
of
too.
useless too, like at that time.
The blind leading the blind.
For sure. And so I sat across from my mom, and at that point she had just lost like 40 pounds at this group fitness center.
Wow, good for her.
Yeah, she was crushing it. She was like totally high on life. So she said, why don't you apply to work at this group fitness place and at least just be, see what it's about.
Yeah.
So I went, the first day I went, I immediately was like captivated by the energy. It was all this positive energy, and everyone's like super excited for each other. And I'm like, listen, I might have a college degree and this job's offering me like $17 an hour. I was like, but this is 100% where I need to be. And so that kind of started this, really was my introduction to personal development and getting better. And so I met trainers, and being in that like belief environment is everything.
Yeah.
And so, that led me into being a trainer. And then I was like the head trainer, and then an opportunity to move to New York City. So I moved to New York City, and I didn't know
you lived in New York.
Yeah.
How long were you there?
So I was there for 6 months.
Oh, wow.
I was there 6 months, so just long enough to learn how to navigate in the city.
What made you come back?
COVID.
Wow, COVID. COVID changes lives.
COVID changed. Like, I was gonna stay in New York. Like even my brothers were like, we didn't know where you were. We thought you were like on Venus. They were like, dude, you just like kind of disappeared. Because I was just like, you know how it is. Like that New York East Coast mentality is like go. And so I was like, wherever we're going, let's go. And then COVID happened, so everything kind of like slowed down. And then that's when I came back to California. And at that point, I was actually a really good trainer. Like I could confidently say, like, I'm a really good trainer.
Yeah.
Like I know the stuff and I know why.
So pause for a second. I let Bryan train me for about 2 months, and you were a really good trainer.
Oh,
yeah,
thank
you really held me accountable. You have an app. You held me accountable to my goals. You were getting me up in the morning.
You're a great client though too.
Yeah, thanks.
I mean, there was some moments where I was like, Lily's gonna be a little bit late, but you were always ready to go.
Like 5:30, 6 a.m. But we got it done. We
We
got it
did.
done. Yeah, but continue.
We did, yeah. Yeah, so I came back to California and I started Built by Bryan, which was like a personal training company. And I was loading up like a roster full of clients. I loved it. And I was training like probably like 10 or 15 people and had like a full roster. And it was like my full focus.
Yeah.
And then these two realtors had sold my parents' first investment property, like actually their first home in Santa Clarita. So my mom encouraged me. She's like, just connect with these two realtors. They were such a joy to work with. Just talk to them.
Yeah.
And so I had a conversation for like 10 minutes. And they, at the end of the phone call, they just said, Bryan, we think you'd actually be a really good real estate agent. We want to invest in you and pay for your real estate license.
Wow.
So I'm like,
If that's not a little angel from the heaven, I don't
For
know
real.
what is.
and it was never on my mind to like get into real estate. It's just they happen to believe in me. And so sure enough, I, took the real estate test and I passed.
And there was no strings attached?
No strings attached, truly.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah,
there
no
are
strings-
kind people in the world, guys.
They're the
believe it or
best.
not.
Yeah. Kim and Kathleen, they are the best. And they're
Shout out
great
to Kim and
agents.
Kathleen.
And so they let me join their team as like kind of like this, just like a mentee under
Yeah.
the two of them. It was like a 2-person operation, and I just kind of like hanging onto their coattails. And the biggest blessing of that is they taught me to do the business with integrity, which is everything.
Yeah, I think that's so important.
It's so important, especially as a new agent. Like you're so fragile, especially in real estate, because there's so many ways to do this business.
Yeah.
And there's so many ways to make money and
Yeah.
whatever. But if you want to have like a long career, I think it's really important that you build a foundation on integrity. And I was
Integrity, yeah.
fortunately able to have 2 mentors that really showed me the ropes like the right way.
Yeah.
And so then as I was like stacking on from there and I learned more about the business, I always felt like it was rooted in doing it for families, like being a trusted advisor, really doing everything with integrity.
Yeah, and when you lead with integrity and honesty, even if you have to lose the deal completely, God always blesses you with 10 more escrows or more clients, or you just have to put your best foot forward and honestly lead on that. I think that real estate in general, realtors have a bad name because there's a lot of agents out there that lack integrity and they do it more so for the commission instead of for the best interest of the client. And it's why I got into this business, right? To advocate for our people, to make sure like we're leading from the front and really just helping our people honestly and truly with integrity. So thank you for saying that. You are one of the beautiful people in this industry.
We're trying to keep it real. So what's funny is that one of my mentors, Kim, she was also an elementary school teacher, so very similar to you.
I love that.
And so again, like when I learned that about you, I can just tell you're very much rooted in like true, authentically wanting good for people.
Yeah.
Like
I try
it takes
to.
a lot to be someone who gets into like child education.
Oh,
First of
yeah.
all, there's a lot of constraints with that. Like,
You had the future of our society, their little brains in your hand.
You do. Yeah.
That's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah. You
I
could
used
be
to show up for work every day like, oh my God, what am I gonna do with these little brains? I gotta get them to produce good things so that I can send them off into the world to be great. That's something
that.
I would pray for every morning. Lord, please deliver a great message to these little humans. So
I
that
love
I
that.
Could position them to be farther ahead and be good members of society.
That's a beautiful way to see it. See, that's a really great way to see it. It's like
So
doing it with
fast forward,
integrity.
here we are. You just finished off. How many years has it been? 2, 3?
So I got my license in May of 2021. I jumped
Okay.
right into real estate. In the first 3 months, I had 3 transactions. And so I was kind of like hit the ground running. But then I had a little bit of like a lull between because I was like, oh, this
Yeah.
is going to be really easy. And then like reality is like, no, it's not. And because I think real estate really, truly, if you're all in, it's kind of like you're developing an identity. For one, I had to break an identity of like being Bryan the personal trainer because I built like a following with that and people would see me as that.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, now I'm a realtor. And they're like, all right, which one is it? And I'm like, I'm not sure.
Realtor Bryan Trainer.
Yeah. So yeah. Which in hindsight, a lot of my clients that I've met through training have also become my real estate clients.
Yeah.
And even today, I actually meet a lot of my clients through like the gym.
Yeah.
And it's just because I do think that sales, at least, or entrepreneurships, it's really about truly being like and living what you really appreciate, know, and
Yeah.
love. And
Yeah.
then like business happens to be something that just ends up getting brought up. And you're like, oh, I
Yeah.
also know that and do that too. So
Yeah, I think you hit it on the nose earlier, Bryan. I think you and I are always on the same pathway with just like wanting to do more. falling in love with self-development, I think, is the key
Mm-hmm.
factor of really being an entrepreneur and being a successful entrepreneur. I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, they really want the success without putting the back end work. And I think that's what makes the difference between being great at something and being mediocre at something. And I think that you and I, our trajectory are very much the same, although we've been in this industry for a short amount of time, but we hold each other accountable to growing and just showing up for ourselves and making sure that we're committing and investing in our careers and our personal development. Like you just started a
Mm-hmm.
book club, I just started a book club. We both hold each other accountable to working out and eating healthy. You
Yeah.
pay for a coach, I pay for a coach. We're constantly doing the role plays, showing up for ourselves outside of the money making activities. I think it's just training yourself and educating yourself that makes the
Mm-hmm.
world of a difference, and wanting to just become the best version of yourself, because we know the more that we do that, although it might seem minuscule in that moment, doing that over a course of time, you end up being a different person. Like you look back and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, 6 months ago I didn't know or do or behave this way. And
Mm-hmm.
now I do. So how do you feel like, or what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And the truth is that eventually you do see like the fruits of your labor.
Hmm.
But more than that, I think it's really like the process of it. I mean, it's always exciting to be like, if I do this in 5 years, I can be there, and those
Yeah.
those sort of things. But in my mind, it comes down to like, for me, it's kind of always about peace, right?
Right.
It's like if I invest in myself really hard, which I did for like
Hmm.
therapy work, and like I had an emotional practitioner, which is like a more holistic way of saying a therapist.
Yeah.
Like by doing that really hard work, it made me more peaceful with who I am.
Yeah.
Because I think it comes down to like this analogy that like you're a cup, right? And you
Hmm.
kind of have to like build more capacity. And
Hmm.
so sometimes it's doing that extra inner work so you
Right.
can fill it with new things.
Yeah.
And so the really exciting part is once you get past the initial fear of like letting go of past stories and past things,
Hmm.
now you have like this whole new capacity where you can fill it with new things,
Right.
which is always really, in my mind, exciting. And then, you get to experience new things and you can
Yeah.
leave old stories behind. And so when you're in motion of all those great things, you don't want to miss any of the moments, especially
Yeah.
like as you see the work starting to show up, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm now reacting in a way that's more cohesive with who I want to be and where I want to go versus
Right.
any past stories.
I
So
agree. And then, so you said cups, and immediately in my mind, I started thinking like a 4 ounce cup, and then an 8 ounce cup, and then a 16 ounce cup. And that's kind
yeah,
of how it is,
for
right? Like,
sure.
that's life. Like, you literally
Hmm.
can continue to pour into yourself. Like, you might start an entrepreneur, like a business or real estate. You might be a 4 ounce cup, and your capacity is but so much. But the more
Hmm.
you pour into your cup, and the more that you train yourself and you self develop and you do the work, then you're all of a sudden now you're a 16 ounce cup. And next
Hmm.
thing you know, you're a 24 ounce cup, and you're just taking over the world.
Yeah, then you're an Olympic-sized pool, and then you're a lake, and then you're an
Right.
ocean.
Oh, I love that
Let's
for us.
go.
If you were close, I'd
Absolutely.
clap you.
Huh?
If you were close, I'd give you air five. But I love your mindset, Brian, and that's why I keep you around. Honestly, you're like a brother to me in this space, and you just recently had some great accolades within your personal life
Hmm.
that I wanted to like kind of cover on here. And one of them, you recently got baptized.
I did get baptized. Yeah. I did.
Like
I did
what called you to do that, and what made you take that leap of faith and just re-honoring your commitment to God? Because I think a lot of us get baptized when we're young, right? Or like it's a decision that
Hmm.
our family makes for us. We don't necessarily make it for ourselves, but
Yeah.
very far and few for us as adults to recommit and restructure our worlds to just be committed to God. So I'm just enlighten us there. Like, what was your mind
Y-
behind that?
Yeah, I mean it's probably a little bit longer of a journey. Like I
Mm-hmm.
was baptized Catholic, and so it's just like a little bit water on the forehead, and obviously
Yeah.
you're like an infant, so you didn't have any say in that choice.
Yeah.
But what it really I think comes down to is my grandmother was one of the most important people in my life. So
Yeah.
she's super diehard Catholic. She's from Bogota, Colombia.
We love that.
And so she was, because both my parents worked full-time jobs, and like honestly I think they worked two full-time jobs. Like my
Mm.
mom at one point a full-time NICU nurse with premature babies at 2 different hospitals while getting her master's degree. And then meanwhile, my dad was a police officer working like a ton of overtime because they had 4 kids and they just like had to do what they had to do. So with that, I spent so much time with like both my grandparents. For one, which is funny, my grandfather was a realtor, broker, taxman, the whole nine for like 40 years.
Wow.
So as I get into real estate now,
it's in your bloodline.
It's in my bloodline.
Oh,
so
that makes sense.
and this is total side note, but as I got into real estate, I started to see why my grandfather was the way he was. Total jokester, just wanted to make light of things. I was like, that's very necessary in real estate.
Yeah.
So besides the fact, my grandmother was very, very religious, always had her like Bible on her little book and her rosary. She's always in the light. Like she'll always be by the window getting some like natural light.
Grandmothers are like that.
And she just has such a special energy.
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately she passed away. I think it was 3 years ago now. And it'll be the anniversary a week from today, actually. So she's just was someone who was so special to me. And when she actually passed, like, I almost didn't go to the funeral because I was like, I'm so busy at that point with like with personal training. No. That in my mind, because I was so all in.
Grandmother, if you hear us, he didn't mean it.
I didn't mean it. And so fortunately, one of my clients, even Tony's like, dude, hopefully you went to that. And so one of my clients was a social worker, and she was one of the first people that really like showed me to believe in myself.
Yeah.
Which I've been so blessed with the clients that I have. I feel like I get more from them than they sometimes get from me.
Yeah.
And she was like, absolutely not. You're gonna go to that funeral, and so of course, like,
and sometimes God sends special messages through people.
1,000%.
Send little angels into your life to keep you aligned and to make you think correctly and go down a good pathway.
1,000%. So of course I went to the funeral. And I was like, I was crying like a baby. Like I was like, and I don't even think anyone else was like really crying. And I was like, I had to get it all out. Like, and I did. Like I just felt so much. So anyways, she was kind of one of the first people that, again, lived with so much peace. Like you never really saw like my grandmother mad. So she was always so special to me. And anyways, so behind this decision to get like baptized again, I didn't actually have it like on my mind, like really that day. But as I was going to church, my fiance, she's like, are they doing baptisms today? And I was like, yeah, I think that they are. And so I have seen God's hand on my life in such an incredible way. One, with the blessings that I'm experiencing right now, but moreover, honestly, the way that I used to live, the fact that I came out of that lifestyle, and the truth is that some of my friends didn't. Yeah. And some of them went down paths that my story would be so different today, and I might not even be here. And so just the evidence of where I am now and where I've been protected from in my past, I just know that God's worked so hard in my life. And so on that day, the pastor just kind of talked about it and said, hey, if you didn't have it planned, but you feel ready. And he even mentioned the thing, it's like, if you got like baptized as a baby, like this is not replacing that. This is just the next step in your path. And I was like 100%, like there was no doubt on my mind. I was like, if this is opportunity, like let's go for it.
That's amazing.
And he also caught me with this line, because in my personal training life, I would always say, you don't have to do it. You get to do it, right? And that's like my license plate.
His license plate says you get to. And when I first met him, I was like, what in the world? You get to do what? But I get it now.
And people are like, you get two?
It.
You get two of what? There's all this. But so the pastor said that he's like, even if you don't have to get, baptized, like you get to. And I was like, he even used my line. I was like,
that's a calling from God.
I was like, that's it.
That's it. Lord, I know you sent it for me. I'm here.
Everything's a sign. Yeah. It was a sign. It was definitely a sign.
Yeah.
So
that's amazing.
So that's the story.
That's beautiful that you were able to just take that leap of faith and recommit in front of everyone. I think it's a lot for some people, and the fact that you did that, that's beautiful. And I'm sure God is going to bless you abundantly because of it. I'm sure He already started to. Yeah. Let's talk about your personal journey a little bit. Other than that, in your personal life, you recently just proposed to the amazing Celine. And it's so funny, Bryan, that you guys are there, because I remember just us connecting when I first joined the brokerage, and you were as single as a dollar bill. And you met Celine, and it was just like you just knew. And Bloss was just with us last episode, and he just knew. And I'm just curious to know how the you just knew feeling came about, and like, what are your thoughts about that, and how did you just know?
Well, I may or may not have been like a $2 bill for a little while. So I was in a previous relationship, which actually served me in such a beautiful way, because the fact of the matter is, I was in a relationship when I was in high school, and with like what I thought was going to be like my childhood, what do they call it? Like a sweetheart, high school sweetheart?
Yeah.
Because my parents were high school sweethearts, And then this girl's parents were high school sweethearts. So that was kind of always the story.
Right.
And we were so young that like everyone was building that story on us that it
Right.
was like, you guys are going to be the high school sweethearts too.
And you probably wanted it because your parents. You're like, oh, let's just continue
Yeah, and I think like when you're in love, especially like as a kid, you're like, it's amazing. It's like the best thing in the world. Like,
kid
what
love
is
is the best love.
Oh my gosh, for
Like
sure.
high school love, like there's nothing like it.
Yeah, it's the
Like
best.
it's like you're high all the time, like just on love.
Everything's new. You're
Everything's
like getting
so great.
Yeah.
You get a text, you're like, oh my god.
Yeah, the best.
Now
Like,
you're old and you're like, oh my gosh.
For sure. It's like the top 10 priorities is all like that one person. And so when I had like made that transition to go to college like out of state, like unfortunately that young love just like, it didn't necessarily work out. And unfortunately, like as a young person, you don't know how to handle all those emotions.
Right.
And so I unfortunately was trying to like battle these emotions with like drinking, with like drugs, like all the sorts of stuff that was like to mask how I was feeling.
Yeah.
Because you don't know any better. And so that was definitely led me to hiding from my emotions for like a really long time. And it was a lot of hurt.
Yeah.
And obviously like some of that hurt comes out too. And you're just like unhappy, super like self-conscious behind the scenes.
And you probably treat people different too, right? Like you're just not your whole authentic self.
Well, meanwhile too, so when I went to college, I also started a fraternity, right? I started a chapter of a fraternity.
Wow.
And I was like the recruitment director.
What haven't you done?
I don't know. So I have like this image of like this frat guy, like fraternity guy. And so I was like, I'm trying to hide from these emotions, and I got this image. I was like, I'm gonna do it the best, and I was like, we're gonna party, we're gonna everything, and
Red cup, $5
for sure. I was going full Bill's Mafia. I was jumping on tables, like it doesn't matter. I was living for the moment for sure.
Yeah.
And again, like God is so good in the fact that I was protected during that time where I was really, truly, really, really vulnerable. / like also doing not great things. So I'm kind of so that lifestyle kind of happened. Anyways,
back to the relationship.
So back to the relationship situation. You got to keep me on track. I got
you. You're a $2 bill situation. You were high school sweethearts.
And so the high school sweetheart situation. So anyways, I ran away from love for like all of those years.
Yeah.
Right. And so with that $2 relationship, that's one way to put it. One thing that she really did is that she reintroduced me to like love.
Yeah.
And I had gotten to a point at that point that I had done enough development and like work inside myself where I was ready for another relationship, which took like 7 years. It took a long time for me to like get into a state where I was like, now I can be vulnerable enough to build like an intimate connection.
Right.
And so although she may not have been like the long-term partner, she did so much amazing things in allowing me to know that, hey, I can fall in love again. And she like allowed me to like learn to trust again. And the truth of the matter is we just had different long-term visions. And I think we're just growing in different directions, which is totally okay.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's God's plan.
Yeah.
But
that happened to me too.
Yeah. But what came out of that was like, I was then single and I was hurt because when you fall in love and then it doesn't work out, you feel real grief too, because it's the death of the idea of where that was gonna go.
Yeah.
And so you feel that trauma. Like when I left that relationship, I was reminded of like my first relationship, of like my grandmother, like all these things started to come up, and I was like, it's crazy that you feel it in your body.
Grieving relationships, honestly, sometimes it's a lot worse than actually grieving the person that actually passed away, like grieving a person that passed away. Like, I think it's a lot harder because that human being still exists in the world, right? Like that human being that you created this idea of what forever was going to look like. You idolized them. You had so many memories. They're still there. They're still out there in the universe, but you're just not creating a life with them anymore. And now you have to get comfortable with the idea of now you're going to become strangers. And although, sometimes there's healthy separations where you can still become amicable friends after the fact, but then sometimes there's that like cutthroat cutoff where communication can no longer be because it's just not in the best interest of both of you. But I think it's just like an undermined, underplayed situation that nobody really talks about. Like heartbreak is they call it a heartbreak, but in all honesty, it's more like a grievance that people need to go through and mourn and give space to in order for them to come out of that so that they can and hopefully learn from so that they can become better versions. And I think that's what you experienced right now. You were able to reflect on that space, although you grieved it.
Absolutely.
You learned from it, yeah?
Absolutely. And one great thing that my emotional practitioner, her name's Missy, and she's the best. She's still the best, and she is still doing her work too. She taught me her big thing is, are we allowed to cuss on this or no? I don't know.
Oh, maybe let's just keep it light.
Yeah, we'll keep it light. But she says like, let that stuff go.
Uh-huh.
What's her big motto, right?
Yeah.
Was like, let that stuff go. So she taught me to like let go of things from the past, but doing it with
Yeah.
love. So that was kind of like one really important thing that I learned, because it
Yeah.
allowed me, like, when someone like crossed me, because there's been many people that have crossed me.
Yeah,
Like
it happens.
like an agent would come to me and like, hey, can you work with me on this deal? And I like pour into them hard. And then he ends up like splitting with like over in the middle of the night. And I was like, we were working on a deal together.
Right.
And I was like, the old me would have gotten upset and tried to like hold a grudge. But I was like, you know what? By preserving my peace, I'm protecting myself. And that's what's most important. And I'm like, you know what? Thank you for coming into my life, showing me that I can pour into someone and make them. And then I would tell
Yeah.
myself a proper good story. And I would say, I can't control the rest. I'm going to let them
Yeah.
cruise. And whatever happens, like truly, I hope the best for them, because they must have been in a state of mind where they needed to do whatever they did. And I really, truly hope the best.
Yeah.
But when I was grieving my previous relationship, it was still really hard. Like
Yeah.
it was still really hard. Like, you know, I'm at the gym at Equinox, and like out of nowhere, I'm like listening to a song, and all of a sudden I started crying like crazy, like over one.
Aw.
And it's like 5:30 in the morning. I'm like bawling my eyes out in the corner of Equinox. I'm like, what in the world? And I had to take precautions. Like I had, you know, I had to.
Great boundaries.
I had to block her on Instagram, and I had to like
Yeah.
unfollow her. And the truth of the matter, the point I'm trying to get to is I did it all with love. Because I was like, even when I walked out of that relationship, I was like, I'm so grateful for all the good things that you played in my life.
Yeah.
Because we grew in different directions, I didn't have a hand in
Yeah.
that. But for what happened, I'm super grateful. And honestly, I feel like God will never let what's meant for you miss you. Right? Like
I
if
love
it's
that.
like if it's designed for you, it won't
Yeah.
miss.
And
And
he'll
so
block the things that aren't.
for sure. And
Yeah.
Celine for me is like the biggest like just bullseye in my life ever. And so
Yeah.
she's just, gosh, she's incredible, and she
You
is
guys see
so
us lately?
yeah,
Eyes light up. It's so cute.
And she just lives with so much, like, she inspires so much peace in me, and she protects my peace, and she's so consistent in her love, and she just shows up in such a beautiful way that like I'm
Yeah.
just so grateful for her, and I would do anything for her and to
Yeah.
protect her and all those good things too.
Yeah.
So
And it's so funny that you say that. I've actually had to come to terms with that. I'm a big believer that everything that happens in your life is either a lesson or a blessing.
I
And
love that.
despite all of the grievance and everything the separations, I've been through divorce. I went through a crazy breakup recently. And I think forgiveness has to be at the front line of that. Not even forgiveness for them, but forgiveness for you. And just really understanding why that person played a role in your life at the magnitude that they did. And initially, you know, it hurts, right? Like there's no denying that. But then you have to take a few steps back and reflect and be like, okay, why was this person sent to me, and what can I learn from this experience so that I can be a better human being moving forward? And really just understanding that now although I went through this terrible thing, or what seemed like a terrible thing at the time, our cup is half full, because now I can take all the lessons that I've developed, and maybe it's a self-development thing, maybe reflecting and seeing all the ways that you maybe dropped the ball, you know, and or could have learned, so that you can apply it to your future and become a better human being for now Celine, right? Maybe if God would have gave you Celine 3 years ago, you probably wouldn't have noticed or been able to receive Celine. But because of your triumphs and because of your tribulations, I think now you're at a space where, you know, Celine's ready for you and you're ready for Celine.
You know what's so funny is that there's a podcast that I did like 3 years ago when I was still in the middle of like my healing journey.
Your hurricane.
My hurricane season. Hurricane Brian.
Your
Hurricane
fires.
Brian caused some devastation. But it's funny because I had a podcast video of that version of me that was still kind of not fully healed, and so I was still kind of like battling. Should I show up? Can I be seen? And so Celine saw the video of me, and that point she was like, "Who is that?" Like she almost didn't recognize me.
Oh no.
But it's true, because even I see that, and it's like Brian, but like turned down to like 20%.
Right.
Which, if you know me, you're like, that's sad. Why? And then I was just going through a lot of healing. So you're absolutely right. Like, had I met Celine at any other part aside from when I did, it wouldn't have been the right timing.
Yeah.
So like, God truly is like, hey, now it's time for me to introduce you to her.
Yeah.
Is like really the way that I felt, and
it's all a journey.
she's just she's perfect in it, and like the way that it works out is always on God's timing. And there's always a plan. And
there's always a plan.
you just have to trust the plan too. And God has all of these abundant resources for you to to protect yourself too, like grace, right? Like what I heard you kind of explaining was like God's grace. Like give yourself some grace, and God's grace is like it's abundant. He's like, I got you. Like just focus on getting better, becoming the best version of yourself, and I will put you where you need to be in life so you can succeed at the highest level.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
I mean, for example, not that I'm going to answer the past of what you've experienced, but I know during the past few years, you've built yourself as a phenomenal team leader.
Oh, thank you.
You know, and I remember when you first came to Luxury Collective, I was like, this girl's no joke. Like she's super legit. And
Thank you.
you know, it's real estate. We know it's super, super hard, but when you see someone else who's also a top performer, you're like, I need to learn from that person.
Yeah.
Which is why we recently became sweet mates. Are you letting me move in? I was home. I was homeless. A realtor gone homeless in the office.
But I'm excited. I'm excited for our sweet mate journey together. I'm excited to hold each other accountable and grow. But guys, thank you so much, Bryan, for joining us today. This has been absolutely amazing. I can't wait to see the wedding with you and Celine and all the things that you guys accomplish and all the greatness that you're going to accomplish in the real estate space and in your personal space and in your journey with God. I'm sure like God's not finished with you yet, and you are just going to flourish and do amazing, abundant things. And I get to have a front row seat. Like, how lucky am I? But guys, if you are experiencing something, if you're grieving, if you're not certain why God has you in this position, give yourself grace. It's a journey. It's not a destination, and it's His timing, not yours. And honestly, take a few steps back, reflect, pray, and just know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And you just have to truly believe that God has a purpose, a journey, and a mission for your life. And He's using you to become the best version of yourself. He's using you as a testimony for those around you, or He's using you in that moment so that you can align yourself with His vision and His plan. Because at the end of the day, it's His vision, His plan. It's not yours. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Leave a comment if you thought this was great. I mean, follow Bryan. Bryan, how can we follow you today?
So I'm on Instagram at Bryan Welch Estates.
Wow, we love that.
And I'm also on YouTube at Realist Realtor Bryan.
Let's go.
So shout out.
Yeah, we love that. So go ahead and follow him. And thank you guys for tuning in. And give this a share. Share it to your bestie. Share it to your friend. We got to put the word out. Until next time.